Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be making my way too early NHL Seattle roster predictions. Now with the Seattle Kraken being the likely name at this point for the Seattle NHL team, I wanted to look at what their roster could potentially look like, and it is very interesting. So what players will be available for them in a year's time, and what could Seattle's roster potentially look like? Watch till the end for all my roster picks and opinions, and of course hit that subscribe button if you're new. Now, the NHL Seattle team will first be playing in 2021-2022, but that did not stop me from making some early predictions here today. The expansion draft is pretty much a year and a half away, being in the off season after next season. So again, it's quite a bit away, but I want to do some early picks just to get a gist of what this roster could potentially look like. Now for today's video, I used Cap Friendly's expansion draft tool, which is a very helpful thing, by the way. I was able to see which players they would protect and which players Seattle, in my opinion, would end up picking. Now, of course, the draft is a year and a half away. This is more so which players Seattle would take right now if the draft was right this moment, rather than in a year and a half away. But still, it is a pretty good mind game, seeing which players would be available, seeing which players would go, and what this team might actually look like. And also at the same time, I can't predict what trades Seattle might make. With Vegas, they made a ton, and a lot of those trades ended up benefiting them in so many different ways. But in this expansion draft, there are no trades, no nothing. So these are the bare bones picks and what these players will be available for. But starting us out here today for my line predictions and what players Seattle might end up drafting, we're going to start out on my first forward line, make our way down to the defense, and of course the goaltending last but not least. But starting us out in the first line, for Seattle's first line in their first season, I have Jaden Schwartz from the St. Louis Blues on the left side as the captain, Mikael Backlund as the first line center, and on the right wing being Tyler Johnson from Tampa Bay. Now, all three of these guys on the first line are kind of products of their team having so many great players, specifically when it comes to Jaden Schwartz, who I was kind of going back and forth on of him going or Robert Thomas, because both of those guys will be available for Seattle, but I think St. Louis will keep Robert Thomas, and by the time the draft does come, I think Thomas will be a top 6 guy for them at the very least, and of course, a lot younger than Schwartz too. But in that same way, Seattle could do a trade like a ton of teams do with Vegas, where they have a clause where they can't take a guy like Schwartz, but they have to go pick some prospects for that. I'm not sure what ends up happening, but I think Schwartz goes. Same thing with Backlund, who will be solid for them, and Tyler Johnson, who at this point Tampa Bay has just been shoving in Seattle's face. I really don't think there's too much chance for Tampa to keep a guy like Johnson, especially with over the past couple of years, guys like Braden Point coming up and being amazing. But then going on to my second forward line for NHL Seattle, and this second line is really solid, and I think will be one of the better ones in 2021 when that time rolls on. But starting us out on my left wing, I have from the Philadelphia Flyers, Oscar Lindblom. In 2021, Lindblom would have kicked cancer in the butt, and he'll be a great player. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if Philly has the spot for him in their expansion draft, and I think Seattle would love to have him. On the center, I have Colorado Avalanche center Tyson Jost. Hasn't had the greatest season, but by the time 2021 rolls around, he's the guy that I think will be very solid for Seattle. And also on the right wing in Ryan Dzingel. It was kind of between me back and forth on him and Eric Hall for Carolina, but I think Dzingel will be the guy left open, and Seattle would love to take him. And this line, I think, will be very solid. Again, 3 guys that are kind of on the younger side, but in my opinion, again, once 2021 rolls around, Dzingel will still be in his prime. You have Lindblom, who will be in the middle of his prime, and then you have Tyson Jost, who will have a lot more experience in the NHL and will be one of the better players for Seattle, especially on that forward group. But then we go on to the third line for Seattle, which in some ways could be even better than the second line. Starting us out from the Toronto Maple Leafs, I have Zach Hyman at the left side. Then as the center with the assistant captaincy, I have Jeff Carter from the LA Kings. And then as the right winger, I have Frank Petrano from the Florida Panthers. Now, for Florida, there is a lot of options right now, specifically when they have the forwards that they do in Barkov, Huberdeau, but all the guys that they'll have to protect, and guys like Dadonov and and Hoffman as well. They'll have a choice between guys like Connolly and Vetrano, but I think in the end we'll go for Vetrano too. Same thing with Toronto, who has a surplus of forwards. I think a guy like Zach Hyman will be a wonderful fit. And then we get into the potential fourth line for NHL Seattle, which is still very solid. Starting at the left wing, I have Ryan Donato from the Minnesota Wild. I was kind of going back between him and Luke Kunin being available for Minnesota, but Kunin's have a very solid season, and I don't think will be at that kind of fourth line caliber for Minnesota, especially in 2021. At the center from the New Jersey Devils, I have Pavel Zacha. Zacha, I don't know if he'll progress too much from what he is right now, which is a very valuable player, great penalty killer, solid defensive guy, and can score some clutch goals. I'm not sure if he's going to improve too much from now to 2021, and I think that's why he will be available. And also on the right wing, I have Connor Brown from the Ottawa Senators. Connor Brown being very underrated and will be a very good spot on that fourth line. But now going from the forwards on to the defensemen. And the defense core for Seattle, at least for what I've drafted, I'm pretty excited about, to be honest. And starting us out here today, I tried to get a little bit of a youth and veteran mix here. You'll see that throughout the whole roster, but especially the defense. And starting us out on the first pair, no better example of that, by the way, the youth and the defense pairing right there, of Dante Fabro from the Nashville Predators and Jeff Petry from the Montreal Canadiens. Once again, there is no trade scenarios in this whole situation. I think eventually when Nashville in 2021 wants to keep Dante Fabro, they'll end up making some clauses here and there. I think they'll want to keep a guy like Fabro, but again, there's no trades here, so they already protected guys like Ellis, Ekholm, and Yossi. I think that's how it's going to go. But with a guy like Fabro, he would be excellent on Seattle. I think can pretty much be the Nate Schmidt for the Vegas Golden Knights, but for Seattle this time around. But let's also not forget Petry, because he, the Montreal Canadiens pick, will be a great player for them, being the associate captain on that team, and rounding out the leadership as well. You have 3 J's there in Jaden Schwartz, Jeff Carter, and Jeff Petry on the leadership. Now going on to my second pairing though for Seattle, this one is a lot more of a leadership and veteran role type pair. Going to it though from the Chicago Blackhawks, I have Calvin DeHaan, and on the right side from the Arizona Coyotes, I have Nicholas Hjalmarsson. But this also does keep the trend of offensive defensemen and defensive defensemen, and I think that's what Seattle will end up going for. You have Calvin DeHaan, who with Chicago unfortunately suffered a very bad injury, but I think will be a guy that Seattle ends up getting in the expansion draft, and a guy like Chicago would kind of be fine to lose, being in his 30s at that point. And you also have Nicholas Hjalmarsson, who would be in his mid-30s, but still a very serviceable defenseman. He might not be as elite defensively at that point, but still a guy that Seattle could totally use. And for those two teams, again, that's defense that they can't afford to lose. But for a team like Seattle, those are 2 huge pieces. 2 guys that can be top 4 defensemen even in 2021. And then we go on to the third pairing. Now, just a disclaimer here, I have 3 extra defensemen, so this could end up changing. There could be defensemen that goes up even more, but there's a lot of options for Seattle either way. Going to my third pair, though, I have Matt Grzelcyk from the Boston Bruins, and on the right side, I have Michael Kempny from the Washington Capitals. Those are 2 guys that I think for both respective teams kind of have to give up, but for a team like Seattle, they will definitely take. Going into the extra defenseman, though, is where it gets even more interesting. For my extra defenseman, my first one, I have Patrick Nemeth from the Detroit Red Wings, who's actually having a pretty decent season, all things considered. And then for a couple of young guys to really boost that defense, you have Caleb Jones from the Edmonton Oilers and Josh Mahura from the Anaheim Ducks. But now we get on to the goaltending for Seattle, and this is one of the most interesting parts about this entire team, is the potential options that Seattle could go with. Now, I almost went with Antti Raanta as a starter. There are so many good options, I think, available for Seattle, especially heading into 2021. But starting us out here today with my starter for Seattle, at least in year 1, I have Matt Murray from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Matt Murray will be a guy that I think could either be traded or gone in Seattle. I don't think Pittsburgh is keeping him outside of 2021, and I think that will be where they get rid of him. Matt Murray is a guy, though, that at least potential-wise has a lot to give for a team like Seattle. When he is drafted in 2021, he will be 27, so still in his prime there, a lot younger than a guy like Fleury for Vegas, for instance. But for a team like Pittsburgh, I think by that point, Jari will be the guy for them, kind of like Matt Murray was when Fleury was expendable for Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. They'll kind of just be recycling the shelves at this point. But for a team like Seattle, Matt Murray, if he gets that glove under control, I think could be a very solid starter for them. Maybe not elite like Fleury was in the first season, but still pretty good. Now, I would say the same thing goes, but for my backup, it's kind of up in the air at this point. There were some other guys that I think Seattle could take, but in the end, I think they will go for Martin Jones. Now, hear me out. In 2021, I really don't know what Martin Jones is going to be doing, but I really doubt that he's this bad forever. I think San Jose might get rid of him at some point if they can, or if they end up keeping him, I think a team like Seattle would like to take at least a risk on him. I think he has some good value and some good potential, but some of those systematic things, some of those little things have been a little bit wonky for the last couple of years. I think they do end up protecting Aaron Dell if they get the chance in 2021, and Jones, with his huge cap hit, goes to Seattle, which I don't think they're complaining about. I think this team has like $40 million of the cap, so they will need some extra cap space, and Martin Jones, I guess, provides that. But if they do actually end up naming themselves the Kraken, you guys know your boy's gonna be on that bandwagon. I don't even care. The Kraken, baby, it doesn't even matter. I'm gonna be hoping for their success. I think it has so much potential as an NHL market, so much potential as an NHL fan base, and I think the Seattle team could be a ton of fun. The Vegas expansion draft was so much craziness and excitement and wonder, and I think that will be the same for Seattle this time around. I think the roster, at least with this, will still look pretty good. But that's pretty much saying from the roster I have here today. I mean, a lot of things can change from here and, of course, to the expansion draft, whether it be with trades that Seattle ends up announcing, what they end up doing. It's going to be a ton of fun. I remember when I was watching the Vegas expansion draft, I had pretty much no idea what was going on at that point because expansion was just that new, and it was still kind of weird to think it would happen a couple of years ago. Now we get a whole new expansion draft, an expansion draft that, quite frankly, I think a lot of NHL GMs have learned from with some of the mistakes they made against Vegas as well. But I think Seattle will turn out very solid no matter what. I think if they name themselves the Kraken, I don't care who they end up drafting, because let's get Kraken. That's all that matters at this point. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching, all y'all. I appreciate it every single day. Of course, let me know your thoughts down in those comments down below. Let me know who you think is going to be on the Seattle roster, who you think is going to be available for the NHL Seattle, and what your roster predictions are as well. For the goaltending, the defense, the forwards, whatever, how do you think Seattle will do in their first year? But if y'all want some more Grav videos just like this one, y'all should click on this card right here to have the full playlist of all my NHL expansion talk videos right in one place. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and of course, ring that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below your thoughts on my expansion roster, what you agree and disagree with, and of course, let me know your predictions as well. Share this video with your friends. Get the Seattle hype going, boys, because it is almost here. My name is Nathan, and I'll see you on the next video or stream. Let's get cracking, baby.